Oh, hi guys, Mr. Urrego here. Today we're going to solve quadratic functions by completing the square. That's our goal for today, learning target. There's a bunch of vocabulary. The first one is going to be perfect square trinomials, which we're going to talk about in a minute. Square of a binomial, radical, radicand index, square roots, and prime factorization. All right, so let's go to the work. The first question is find the value of c that makes the polynomial a perfect square trinomial, and rewrite it as a square of a binomial. Now, let's get familiar with the terms first of all. Now, let's address first the perfect square trinomial. So here I'm have some patterns, but these patterns are useful in multiplication problems. But again, it's the same thing as, not the same thing as factoring, but it'll be the opposite of factoring. So here, what I have here right now, let's see, it's going to be working on that. There you go. Let's use purple. There you go. That's a squared plus 2ab plus b squared. That's a perfect square trinomial. It's a pattern. I have a squared minus 2ab plus b squared. It's also a perfect square trinomial. It's a pattern. So when I factor it, perfect square trinomial, I'm going to have an answer, something that is called to the second power, which is square. That's a 2. Of a binomial. So a plus b will be by that binomial, and the square will be called square of a binomial. So every time I'm factoring, I'm taking this trinomial, and I'm factoring a plus b to the second power. The trinomial again is a perfect square trinomial, and this a plus b to the second power is called the square of a binomial. Okay, that applies for either I have a plus in the middle, like I have here, or a minus. The third pattern, that's a difference of squares. That's something different. So, again, that's what a square, perfect square trinomial is. So now let's go back to our lesson. Now, let me give you some examples of perfect square trinomials. So, I have the first one, x squared plus 6x plus 9. That follows a pattern. If I'm going to factor that trinomial, that's going to give me x. Because I have a plus here, then I'm going to have a plus right there. So x plus square root of 9 to the second power. Okay, so I take the x squared turns into an x right here, and then I do the square root of 9. Or, which is the same thing, is I do half of the 6x, half of whatever number is here. Now, this trinomial technically is as x squared plus bx plus c, which is going to be factored as x plus b over 2 to the second power. Okay, so let's go over again. Here, in my first trinomial, the b, this b, is equal to 6. Okay, so when I factor, I'm going to do half of 6, which is plus 3. Okay, let's factor the second one. I have x squared minus 10x plus 25. That's a perfect square trinomial. When I factor it, I'm going to have x, half of negative 10. Half of negative 10 is negative 5 to the second power. That's what the b divided by 2 means. B is the middle term, whatever is with the x, and I divided by 2. So negative 10 divided by 2 is negative 5. Same is going to apply to the third one. So my third one, I have x squared plus 12x plus 36. That's a perfect square trinomial. So the way I factor it is x, and now half of b divided by 2. B is 12. B is the number next to the x. So that's positive 12. Half of that, 6 to the second power. So again, the trinomial is called a perfect square trinomial. The answer, this, is called a square of a binomial. Square of a binomial, all right? Those terms. Let's proceed. Now that we're familiar with those terms, the perfect square trinomial and square root of binomial. Now let's proceed to find the value of c. Now here you notice I have a trinomial, but my trinomial, I have a value missing. I have here, my constant is missing. I have x squared minus 18x plus c. So the question is, find the value of c that will make the whole trinomial a perfect square trinomial. Okay, there's a formula which is a pattern basically how to find the value of c. So c will be equal to b divided by 2 to the second power. Now from here, and let me erase, from here technically you have x squared plus bx plus c. So my b is any number that is in front of the x. So let's find the value of c. So c equals b, in my case, negative 18 divided by 2, everything to the second power. Negative 18 divided by 2 is negative 9. So I'm going to have a negative 9 to the second power, which is 81. So the c is equal to 81. Now let me write that. X squared minus 18x plus c, and c is 81. And that's my answer. Okay? Let's try one more. Now here, same pattern. Okay? What's different is, remember, let me rewrite it underneath. So I'm going to have x squared plus bx plus c equals, when I I'm not factoring right now, so I'm just rewriting the value of c. So let me go back. So finding the value of c. Okay? So to find the value of c, I know that c is equal to b divided by 2 to the second power. B is the number in front of the x. So it's going to be 5 divided by 2 to the second power. When I have a fraction raised to the second power, the top is going to be to the second power, which is 5 squared is 25. And the bottom is going to be square also. 2 squared is 4. So that's your value of c. Let me replace it. X squared plus 5x plus 25 over 4, which is the value I just found. And that's your answer. Okay? Now let's proceed at let's proceed at solving using this process. So now we're going to solve using completing the square. Now we're going to use the process that we just did to solve the quadratic equation. Now we have x squared plus 6x minus 11 equals 0. If you notice, they're asking me to solve. Solve. Why? Because I have an equal. That means I need to find the values of x. All right. Complete the square. Now, our steps of completing the square are the following. Every time I have this, I want to have my x's on one side. Like I said in class, that's the only time that I want my x's together. Okay? And any other number is going to be to the other side. So, in this case, I have a negative 11 that I want to get rid of. So I have to add 11 on both sides. So I'm going to have x squared plus 6x equals 11, because this is negative 11 plus 11 cancels out. Okay. Now, if you notice, I have a blank. I have a blank. That's the space for the value of c. Okay, so I have that blank. Let's find the value of c. So my value of c is equal to b over 2 to the second power, which is b is, that's your value of b, which is 6 divided by 2 to the second power, which is 6 divided by 2 is 3, to the second power is 9. So the value of c is 9. Now, you notice, I'm having issues with this plus. There we go, plus 9. Now, I just added 9 to the left side of the equation. It's an equation, therefore I have to add 9 to the other side so the equation doesn't change. Okay, so whatever I do on one side, I do on the other side. Remember, okay? So now I just find the value of c. After this is rewriting that trinomial as a perfect square trinomial, which means is to factor it. Remember how do we do it up there? So it's going to be x and half of this, half of b. Half of b is plus 3 equals. If you're not sure about this, go back to the dot work, and that's how we solve it. Now the other side, 11 plus 9 is going to give me 20. So far so good. Now I need to find the value of x. I'm still not done. So to find the value of x, the following step is the following. I need to solve the left side. I need to leave the x by itself. But I have that parenthesis to a second power. The way how to get rid of the square is by doing the square root. My square root will cancel that square. If I do square root on one side, I do square root on the other side. So I'm going to have the square root will cancel the square, and the x plus 3 will come out of the radical. In the other side, every time I do radical square roots on both sides, and when I have an equation, as soon as I do square root, I'm going to have two answers, positive and negative, in front of the radical. Square root of 20. I'm just rewriting that with the plus or minus. Now, normally what I do is I need to address that plus or minus. I'm sorry, I need to address that 20 on the side. So I'm going to bring that 20 on the side. I need to find out, is there anything that I can take out of that square root? So the 20 breaks into 4 and 5. The 4 into 2 and 2. And if we remember, when we're doing radicals, to take something out of the square root, I need 2 of the same value to take 1 out of the radical. Because I only have 1 5 left, that's not coming out of the radical. Remember, all of this is supposed to be inside the radical. So, because I broke the 20. Now, again, I have 2 2's, so 1 is coming out of the radical. Because I only have 1 5 left, that one is not coming out of the radical, so that stays inside the radical. So square root of 20 is the same as 2 square root of 5. Let me replace that over here. So I'm going to have x plus 3 equals plus or minus, oh my god, x plus 3 equals plus or minus, plus or minus, this thing's not letting me work, 2 square root of 5. Okay, but again, one more step. Still, my x is not by itself, so that 3, I have to get rid of that 3. So I'm going to do minus 3, minus 3. So I'm going to have my final answer as x, 3's cancel, equals. Because the 3 only has one sign, and the square root has 2 signs, you're not able to combine them. So what I do always is that I bring the 3 in the front, and then whatever has a plus or minus, I push it to the end of the answer. And that will be my final answer. X equals negative 3 plus or minus 2 square root of 5. Now you got to make sure that you understand that you have 2 answers from here. 2 answers. One answer will be using the plus, and the other answer will be using the minus. I'm going to break that into 2 answers just to make sure that we all understand the 2 answers. So let's go. X equals negative 3. So my first answer will be x equals, let's do it with purple. X equals the negative 3 in front. And now I'm going to use the plus 2 square root of 5. So that's one of my first answers. The second answer will be using the other sign. So my 3 is still negative, negative 3. And now I use the minus from the answer. Minus 2 square root of 5. So one answer will be using the plus, and the other answer will be using the minus. Okay? And therefore, this will be your 2 answers for the problem. We have the calculator, just use the calculator to solve that. Okay? Now, let's try one more. Let's try one more. There we go. So we have x squared minus 8x equals 60. Okay, now again, I need to solve for x. I need to find the value of x. That was a question. The process, nobody will tell you, oh, solve it this way, solve it that way. Do factoring, do computing the square, use the quadratic formula. So basically, it's up to you at some point. If there's no directions, then you do any way you want. You're able to factor, you factor. In our cases, we're not able to factor these problems. So I'm using completing the square. Okay, so if you remember, the first step was to have my x's on one side and my numbers in the other side. All right, so which we have. We don't have to do anything for that. So x's on one side, numbers in the other side. Remember the bad joke? That's the only time that you want your x's together. So your x's. All right, I hope you got it. So I have my x squared and the x on one side, so I'm ready to go. So from here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave some space, x squared minus 8x, and some space equals 60 because I need to complete the trinomial. Remember, the perfect square trinomial. So what I'm looking for now is to find the value of c. If I do it on one side, I do it the other side. Remember. So I'm looking for the value of c. So to find the value of c, I'm going to do it on side. c equals b over 2 to the second power. b is 8, is negative 8, so I'm going to have negative 8 divided by 2 to the second power. Negative 8 divided by 2 is negative 4. Square, 16. So I'm going to add 16 on the left side, which is the value of c, and 16 on the right side. Okay, now on my left side I have a perfect square trinomial. That's a perfect square trinomial. The way that that's factor is x and half of b. b is negative 8, so half is negative 4. Everything to the second power, and this is what is called a square of a binomial. Okay, just to make sure that we understand what's going on. Oh my god, hold on. So we have our square of binomial, and the other side is going to be 60 plus 6. I'm sorry, 60 plus 16. That's going to give me 76. Now I have a parenthesis to the second power. I have to get rid of that square. To get rid of that square, I need to use a radical. So square root on the left side, square root on the right side. As soon as I do square roots, remember, I'm going to have a plus and a minus in front of that radical. So the square root cancels the square. I'm going to have x minus 4 on the outside. Other side, plus or minus square root of 76. Okay. Now I'm going to take care of that 76. So square root of 76 is the same as divided by 2. How much is 76 divided by 2? Is 38. Okay. And I'm going to break 38 as well. 38 is 19 and 2, right? And my answer is, for every 2 that I have, for every 2 of each number that I have square root 2 here and then 2 here, 1 comes out. 19 is a prime number, and there's only 1. Because there's only 1, it's not coming out of the radical, so you stay in there. So let's rewrite this again. I'm going to have x minus 4 equals plus or minus 2 from the right side to square root of 19. Last step, get rid of that 4 on the left side, so plus 4, I'm going to have x equals 4 plus or minus 2 square root of 19. Okay, remember, we have 2 answers on this. We have 2 answers. Some people will let you, leave the answer like that with plus or minus, and some other teachers will request to get the 2 answers. So if they request the 2 answers, one answer is going to be with the plus, which is 4 plus, I'm going to use that first, 2 square root of 19. I'm sorry, the 19. My second answer will be x equals 4, and now I'm going to use the minus 2 square root of 19, and there you go, you got two answers right there. Alright guys, that was completing the square. Thanks for watching. Study please. Take care.